Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to our session, our special session today. And I'm glad you, I'm still having a lot of participants coming. So to start our session, I would like to call Francisca to talk a little bit about the project BrainStorms and for us to have a clue what is going on. Francisca.
Hi. So our project started because a few members of Tecnico, students and faculty, approached Isabel, who is our guest today, with the concern that mental health in Tecnico was a big problem. And we wanted to share and give information and tools to everyone in the Tecnico community. So Isabel put up this team, and we started coming up with what we thought was important for now, for the time and the problem we're living in. And we came up with the BrainStorms, a cycle of sessions that want to give information and tools to the technical faculty and everyone who wants to join, so we can cope a little bit better with the problems that we're living. John, back
Thank
to you.
you. Thank you, Francisca. So this special session is held in English because BrainStorms partnered with the community Bioenergy. I'm the local manager in Lisbon. The community Bioenergy is an European network of students and alumni and energy professionals, and we call ourselves the energy transition generation. And we try to create changing agents to foster sustainable future. And that's why we came up with this idea of partnership, because nowadays the most important thing that we must keep in our minds is our mental health and equilibrium to get on and cope with this, with the challenges that we are facing today. So to begin our session, I would like to present our speaker today. Our speaker is called Isabel Gonçalves. She's a specialist in educational she's a specialist psychologist in clinical and health psychology, and also in educational psychology. She's also a specialist in psychotherapy and psychological coaching. She's the founder and coordinator of the Academic Development Office at Instituto Superior Técnico. And now I pass on the after presentations. Isabel Gonçalves, you're free to go. Thank you very much for being here.
Present, for your interest in being here, and thank you again, Francisca, for the nice presentation of the BrainStorms project. So I'm going to make a very small presentation, so just to give you some ideas and my thoughts on this very special time of our lives. And so I'm going to share my screen so that you can follow my presentation easier. So the title of the session is "How am I supposed to go back to normal?" And I think this is the first way to start, because at the moment, what really is normal for all of us? I think that's one thing that we have to think about today. So I started by, I'm going to send you a link of a movie that is called Spaceship You, and I'm going to give you some ideas. I invite you to see the movie because it's very interesting, but I'm going to give you some ideas on these, but general ideas that it looks like we are all trapped inside a one-person spaceship. Some of us are living with other family, and but in the most general way, it's like sort of we are closed inside the spaceship. This character here, and he appears in the movie, in this spaceship, there's these yellow and blue areas that are light up in that part of the ship. And they represent, as we will see, the physical and the psychological part of our lives. And what the general idea of these presentations is to remind you that at this time, really to take care of our own mental health is or should be a priority, because as we will see, many studies are now beginning to be made that even if we go back to normal, we will be carrying with us lots of fears that we have acquired during this quarantine and all that is happening, especially because there's no end on sight yet. So the title of this movie is Lockdown Productivity, which I think is also very important. And my next slide is a text that was sent to civil servants in Canada. And I'm going to read it because I think it's so important. So all civil servants received this, and I believe that lockdown productivity has got a lot to do with this. So first thing, we must think that we are not working from home. We are in our homes during a crisis trying to work, which is pretty different. And that means also that our personal, physical, mental, and emotional health should be and really are far more important than anything else right now. What in the movie you can see is, and I suggest you do not start seeing the movie now because you'll get distracted. You can do afterwards. It's better that you do it afterwards because it will work as a reminder of what we have been talking about here. So the general idea is that we, at some point, this crisis will end, and we do not know what the world will look like after it ends. I think I see this crisis a lot like, you know, those lines of domino pieces, and they all start falling down. And I don't see this as a bad thing, but I see it as a sort of an effect that will build into each other. The reactions will lead to other reactions, and we do not know how we will end up with, but we know that at some point we are going to leave our solitary spaceship, and we will all have to work together for a better world. So in fact, we will have to be healthy, both physically and mentally. Also, I think that another idea of this email that was sent to civil servants is that we should not try to compensate for lost productivity by working longer hours, which I know, tend to do sometimes. And we also, it's important that we be kind to ourselves and to other people, because we are all coping with a difficult situation. Some people will talk about online teaching and learning, and I think this is in fact emergency teaching and learning. So we are all living in an emergency, and obviously I think that we are all answering, especially in Portugal. I'm really proud of what we are doing, but I think we are all trying to cope with a very difficult situation. And for the students who are from abroad and who are living here, also we are trying to make the best for their experience, educational experience. But obviously this is just an emergency, and we have given answers to the problems, but we did not have much time to think about that, because that's what you do in emergencies. Also, I think it's important that we do not judge others based on the way we are coping with the problems. So people have different realities, especially they have different histories. They have lived their lives in different ways. They have dealt with situations in different ways. They have learned from their families to deal with situations in different ways. So I think it's very important that we are all the time, but especially now, understanding towards difference. And also, I think we should not measure the success of our team or our own personal success based on what others are doing, because others are doing differently, because they are living this situation differently. So this is the first thing that I would like to share with you. I think it's a very inspiring text. I wish I had received it, but I didn't. So I think I can share it with you now. So the idea of going back to normal, it's very interesting. I've chosen this image. It's like coronavirus is doing an eclipse on the earth, and everything looks a bit gloomy and dark sometimes and scary. and you know that eclipses are very respected and feared for some time events. But in the end, and this is the hope, the eclipse will end and we will go back to a certain kind of normal. But are we already there? And the answer, I think we all know it, no, we are not already there. So if we are living a new situation, either a strange, difficult situation or what we now call the new normal, usually we have these stages, and they are also called stages of grief. And you may ask, well, what are we, apart from the people who have lost family and friends for the COVID crisis or any other crisis, what are we saying goodbye to? I think we are at this moment all together grieving for a world where surprises like these were eventually possible, but maybe not probable. We are grieving for a simpler world, a freer world where we could go out and do our stuff, our thing. And at the moment, we have to think a lot about what we are going to do. We have new situations to deal, and we have started looking at the world in a different manner. So the first stage, I think we have all been there in the beginning of March, was really disbelief. Is this really happening? Is this really so dangerous? Are we going to cope? How are we going to cope? And I think that maybe in some places, some people still are in this stage of disbelief. Some people will say, and I have been in some discussions like that, and probably you too, like, you know, this is just like another flu, and why are we doing such a fuss? So in many ways, we start by disbelief, just like when someone we really like dies suddenly. Then we go into a phase of anger. Why is this happening? This is so unfair. Why did the Chinese not pay attention? And all sorts of things. And we become angry at people and situations and contexts that, you know, we get mad at the disease that has taken the life of someone we love, or the car that, and it's useless, we know that, but it's necessary. Then after that, we grieve, we feel sad, and many people are feeling very sad and lonely at this moment. But the well is an acceptance stage. I will talk a little bit more about this. And another further stage is sort of an optimism, when we start to see the light shining, or the rainbow. Everybody uses the rainbow image these days. So a hope for better days, and maybe for some people a hope for a more sustainable future. There are some people who are already saying, well, this is a big change. We wish it didn't happen, but since it did, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to change? So fear and sadness and even anger are really normal reactions to a subnormal situation, a situation where, as you see here, every morning, especially in the beginning, we wake up and there's more news and sort of a damage report. In Portugal, usually somewhere in between 12 and 13, we'll be watching the TV and looking at the numbers of how many people are sick, how many people died, and this is really strange. We have got used to it, but it really is strange. We don't do this normally. So all of a sudden, everybody becomes like Sheldon. Everybody will be really scared and worried. Some people more, some people less. either with what's surrounding them or people who are familiar to other people who belong to the risk groups, very scared that they may die, and trying to make them comply to the rules to avoid the disease. So all of this is really normal. I know it sounds strange, but it's normal in a different and complicated situation. So what does acceptance look like? So acceptance really means that we do not complain or let's say spend a lot of energy fighting against reality. We just accept reality. Some people say this is a mindful mindset, that is, accept reality as it is. And you may say, that means we should just accept and do nothing. And of course not. We accept, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that we are handcuffed. We have to deal with reality, and there are ways better than others to deal with the reality. But acceptance really is important, and it is in fact the beginning of some change. So acceptance really is easier when we see the light at the end of the tunnel. In the end, I will show you a quote from one of my very favorite authors. His name is Viktor Frankl, and he was a Jew. He was a doctor, and he was in Auschwitz, and he survived. And what he says is that many people in the camps were able to resist with their last strength until the day that the freedom of the camps was going to happen, because lots of rumors were circulating regarding these all the time. And some people who were just, you know, very low on energy and hope just died when the freedom of the camp did not happen as expected. So we all try to pull our strength together until the moment that we can feel okay again. But at the moment, we are not there yet. So we do not know for how long we will have to hold on what we have and to deal with whatever is happening the best way we can. So I think that we should all be extra careful aboard the spaceship U, and we should take care of our mental health. So I think that it's important that we, as persons and as teachers and as colleagues, pay attention to ourselves and to those who surround us. I have here this very simple image of the depression and anxiety main symptoms. And as you can see, depression and anxiety in many ways are just like, you know, twins together. And some of the characteristics of both depression and anxiety are common, like restlessness, excessive worrying, and agitation. I think we have all been there at some point or another, but at the moment it's sort of like the normal. And I think another thing that I feel it's very important is that we build up depression and anxiety. And what this happens is that we are on our edge. If anything else joins in, any more problems or any more difficulties, we are not so apt to deal with them as we used to be, because our levels of depression and anxiety are a little bit increased by all the changes that are happening and that I've been talking just previously. So your mission, our mission, is to return better than we left, which is quite a challenge, especially in a time like this. But if we consider, and everybody says this on Facebook and Instagram, all the social media are full with this, it's when you leave your comfort zone that you are most apt to learn and to build new things, as long as you are not destroyed by depression and anxiety. So my invitation to you all is that you return better than you left when we started all this. So my suggestions on this, and I can tell you that I try to apply them myself, so I can share with you my own difficulties in doing this. But what do I think it's important? First, very important, divide your spaceship, and here is the link, and I think João can put it on the chat as well. This is the link of the video I've told you about. And what the video says is that we should not spend all the time in our spaceship with no boundaries in between activities. Activities should have boundaries, clear boundaries, so that we can live a more healthy life. And he says that exercise is not optional. He says that sometimes it's easier to feel better just by exercising than by doing anything else. And lots of studies show that exercise, especially exercise in the open air, is very important to keep yourself mentally healthy as well. Again, sleep, and I'll give you some ideas on all of this. It's also very important to have a routine of sleep. In these brainstorm talks, we have seen that many students are having some difficulty in all of these, habits, routines, and borders between activities. The third is creation, and I like this, it's the term they use in the movie, and I like it very much, not work, but creation, because it means that maybe we can do a lot of creative work, but we also have to create special conditions to be able to be creative. And relaxation, it also is very important. So 12 tricks to work better, to create better. Have a dedicated workspace. Do not work everywhere in the house. And even if you have, which is pretty difficult, and that's why I like the movie Spaceship, if you only have a room and are staying most of the time in your room, you also have to do this, to have, let's say, a mat to do your exercises, and a paper on the wall with your program of exercises to do indoors and outdoors. And you also have to have your bed, and that's where you sleep, and the table, that's where you work, and maybe use some relaxation more out of doors. They also say something very interesting, that is, we all try to go on Netflix and YouTube, and the really interesting stuff ends. And if you go on looking, and you will end up with things that are not that interesting. And so it does not work as relaxation, because it will not give you the energy back that you need to again spend on other activities. So have a dedicated workspace, and try to stay off social media, or at least make some limits to the use of this. Try to dress inside the house, not exactly as you would if you went outside, but in a sort of professional way, to show you that you are on a professional task. Maybe even you can have some special clothes for working, and other clothes just to relax and do other things at home. So set boundaries between activities, and do write a long-term plan so that you can follow it through the time. Avoid procrastination, because if you feel you are not, I know that the levels of production will decrease, but that does not mean that you shouldn't do something that really occupies your creative mind, because it takes your mind off worries. Save household chores for later. especially if you have decided on a schedule, and include breaks in your schedule. Take a gym or a yoga break. Now that we are coming out of the quarantine, we can do it outdoors, which is good. Try to make some human contact, if not possible. And I was talking with João, and João told me, well, some students are away from their homes, and so they feel lonely, they can't go back, or they can't come in again because frontiers are still locked in many places. And yes, that's difficult, but I think that we have all learned to use Zoom and Skype to be connected, and sometimes even we can do it, for instance, with a picnic. We can see people in some situations, so do not fail on human contact. Find your focus zone, the way you work better, and make it an habit as much as you can. We will talk again about this, and I'm going to share a blog that presents some of these ideas, and again a quotation from one person that shared his experiences to say, and it is very important, that you should not spend all the time sitting in front of the computer. And this is good in some ways, because if you are at home, you can do things that you really like, or read books that you really enjoy, and make a small break. For instance, to just read a chapter in a book and then go back to work, or just go outside, walk the dog. So some activities that you could also start doing, because we are able to go out now more. Immerse yourself in nature. Studies show that nature is very curative. It's very good for your health, especially your mental health, as well as your physical health. You can make a program for exploring your neighborhood. One very good thing is that Lisbon is without tourists. It's awful in some ways, but on other ways you can explore the city that has been so occupied during summer with tourists. Or just pick a neighborhood to walk, and bring your camera and take photos of graffitis or new coffees. Even those, make a report on what's closed and what's open, or go bird watching. Even in Lisboa, you can do some bird watching, or you can see where the trees are, what sort of trees are there in Lisboa that you don't know about, or even wildlife sort of living in around, for instance, in Monsanto. You can go fishing, for those of you who like it, or do a photography walk, or participate in a photography contest if you want. Go to the beach, but be careful. Or fly a kite or a drone, which is another thing that you can do. Or to go kayaking or sailing in the river Tagus, or just cross the river on boat, obviously in a safe way. Have a picnic or hug a tree, since you cannot hug people. It's not the same, but it's something. And do some gardening, because gardening makes you feel that something is growing, and feel that you are contributing for that is also good for your mental health. Some things that you can do in the creative side: you can learn a new language or sign language, or you can organize some notes that you have been thinking about organizing and didn't have the time to do so, or read something unrelated to your subject, or podcasts and audiobooks that someone has at some point told you it would be interesting and you didn't have the time to do it. Or join an online choir. There are some now, and it's a very interesting experience. Or help other people. Lots of people at the moment are in need of help. Try to keep socially active. Keep a journal. You can, I don't know if you have read Gonçalo M. Tavares' Expresso report, which is called Days of the Plague. it's sort of a journal where he airs his feelings, or sort out your finances, or deep clean, or redecorate your room. You are going to spend there some time, or do an at-home workout or a plan for a workout, to take a virtual museum tour. That's another idea. Or to plan your next holiday trip. One day we will go back to normal and you can have a very detailed and interesting a holiday trip planned to do. Or if you don't know, learn how to cook, or learn how to cook different things. For instance, I know that ferment, I think, for bread, to make the bread rise, has been out of the supermarkets, because lots of people are learning to do their own bread, which I find interesting. Also, you should sleep well. Some ideas: do not focus on insomnia. If you think you are going to have an insomnia, probably you will. Our mind works like that. And develop a ritual for going to sleep and do it every day. Sleep in silence and in the dark. Many people don't like it, but usually darkness, if you sleep while it is dark and are wake up while it is light, usually that will help you regulate your sleep. And do not eat much or drink alcohol, especially before going to sleep, although for some people the idea is that it helps. Take a walk outside before going to bed, especially now that it's warm during the day. Sleep on a comfortable, firm bed. Go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, because our body responds well to routines. Mind the temperature in the room, not too hot, not too fresh. And try to disconnect from screens at least 2 hours before going to sleep. Reading is much better for sleeping. Avoid staying long time in bed while awake. It's better to get up, or to just take some notes on what's worrying you, and you will look at them tomorrow. So make this an habit. At the beginning it will be difficult, but with time, and if you practice, it will improve with time. So take care, and remember that we will have to reorganize, restart, and reframe our way of living, and that's not avoidable at the moment, I think. Also, I think it's important that you avoid isolation, but not necessarily loneliness. The two images are here to remind us that introspection may be useful at times like this. I did not resist to include here that during the outbreak of bubonic plague, Newton and the University of Cambridge was closed for 2 years, and Newton as retired for a small farmhouse where he developed calculus, optics, and gravitational theory. I do not expect you all to do like Newton, but it would be good if that happened, and I would be very proud. So the main thing is focus on whatever is within your control, and just try not to worry too much about what is outside of your control. So avoid, and I decided to include this after a small talk with João. Many times people will think, oh, I've got to change something in my life. Maybe this PhD doesn't make sense. Avoid big decisions at this time. It's too different and too complicated for you to deal with this reality. So avoid some big decisions. And my cheerio to you in this presentation is the quote from Viktor Frankl, and he says, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. So this is my invitation to you, and I'm open to answer to your questions. So João, I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Isabel, for your presentation. I will stop your sharing. Yeah, perfect. So now we can start our informal conversation. So I tease everyone to post their questions on the chat inside the Zoom session. So I remind you that besides being a psychologist, Isabel Gonçalves is also very she has a lot of experience in educational training and coaching and emotional intelligence. So I tease you all to make your questions regarding your specific problems as being a student or a faculty member, as I'm going to do myself. So to start, we have here a question, I think, from Nelson. I think the question is related to the circular graphic you showed us regarding the readaptation process. He's asking like this: when you say disbelief, who who are you referring to? I mean, who disbelieve who? Is it disbelief in the sense that people don't believe that this virus exists at the beginning? Or you mean that people will disbelieve that this virus or the situation that we are in will pass one day?
Well, that's a quite complicated question. What I really mean is that in the beginning, many people tried, let's use another word, to deny either the situation or the gravity of the situation. And different ideas, I don't know what happens with you, but I have sometimes some talks with friends who will just say, this is not that dangerous. And I think that I wouldn't like to spend much time discussing if it is or it is not dangerous or not, but I think that we all understand that it is changing our lives and that we don't really know when a cure or a vaccine will be available. And data on group immunity seems as well to be quite challenging. So I think the first reaction is disbelief. Some people will stay in this stage longer. Some people will move on and try to adapt. I think that's it. I don't know if I was really clear, but this is the idea.
Thank you. I think this readaptation process, I believe it starts with disbelief.
Yes.
Yeah, and at least because we don't know the consequences of it in our lives, so we cannot
And drown,
expect this.
in the lives of those we love.
Yes, not
Not
only
only our
ourselves.
lives. I think that one thing is very clear, and that is that this disease can be really dangerous for some special people and grandparents and sometimes parents, people who belong to the risk groups. Many times we are really worried about what's going to happen with them, not only now, because I think this is the main thing, not only now, but we know, because everybody says so, and I believe so, that maybe during winter we'll be again worried about this.
Yes.
So yes.
Another question from Nivea. She's asking how to deal with uncertainty when you don't know when you can see your family again, living in different countries with different responses to COVID, with different post-COVID immigration rules, and also different stages of this fighting against COVID. What do you have to say about this?
Well, what I really would like to answer, Nivea, is something like this. And what I really mean by this is, I think there's more or less two choices. One choice is to worry, but unfortunately, a lot of this is outside of Nivea's control. And if we live in a country and our family is in another country, and for instance we don't think they are dealing with the situation in the proper way, and we feel our family is at risk and we cannot give them a hug, that's really, really difficult and really, really sad. So what can we do? Obviously we could decide we would go and meet them, but many times that is not even possible. So my idea is that if you cannot change it, you better adapt. And what I mean by adapt is try to do whatever you can, write letters, send presents, talk on the Zoom, tell people that you love them, ask them to tell you that they love you, and try to, again, what they say on the movies, once at some point we have to come down and do whatever is we have to do to make the world function again and eventually improve. So let's keep ourselves healthy, because if we are not, definitely we cannot help the people that we love and are far away and suffering. So concentrate on what you can do.
Definitely. We cannot do nothing about this. We only control how we deal with this situation. I have a question also, and Nivea made another question. So I will try to join the two together. So you said that acceptance is easier when you see the light at the end. So when there's a forecasting per se. This can be used and this can be talked related to COVID and also this exceptional time we are living in, but also what is our new normal from now on, and what is how can we deal with the uncertainty of our future? So Nivea's question is, what would you say to those students finishing their undergraduating years about the fear of not finding a job with the problems in economy we will all face? So this uncertainty about our future is definitely troubling.
Well, what I can tell you, maybe this is more of a philosophical position from me, but I think that it's just an illusion that we live in a world that we control. I think that we have to wake up from that illusion. I know it's very difficult to live and accept that there's a lot of things that we cannot control. We can just do our best, to the best of our abilities. And that's also valid for students. One thing that I find is really interesting is that a lot of people have been reacting in Portugal and all over the world, trying to react and create new opportunities that are valid for themselves and that are valid for others. For instance, that Portuguese student, I think in Cambridge, I don't remember, that decided to build ventilador. And he offered the plans of this ventilator to all humanity. And I think that at these times we have to find purpose in a world that is strange, that it's difficult to connect to, that brings at the moment lots of suffering for us and uncertainty. But I think that uncertainty is part of life, and I think it's a big handicap if we cannot function because life is uncertain. I know this is a philosophical position, but I think it's especially valid in times like this. So what's the use of worrying? I know it's very difficult not to, but I think we should concentrate, especially going back to the question, especially on hoping. Let's say prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Let's hope that once we finish and once there's a solution and go back to a life that is maybe more predictable, not controllable. Maybe we can find, how can I say, maybe we can find some purpose, and maybe we can find a way to contribute to our lives, to the lives of the people that we love, and to humanity in general. So I think we should focus on a brighter future and to be the right person in the right place when we are called to answer. And I think that there's going to be plenty to do and very interesting things for the students in STEM, in the STEM area. I really do.
Yes. As a student myself, I'm doing a PhD, and I also worried about worry about the future itself. And I think that this uncertainty is definitely troubling, but also it's an opportunity, and priorities has changed. So we need to figure something out that we can supply, that we can really give purpose to our work, having in mind that the priorities changed. And definitely we must have something that we can do to make this situation better. Thank you very much for your for your opinion. So I have here other question for Maria. How to deal with the anxiety that comes from the gray areas of going out? Should we get out just because we can? How to not stress about what is okay and what it's not, just because no one really knows the answer to that. What to do when the idea of going out is more stressful than actually staying home?
This is the question that gives, that connects directly with the text, with the title of these.
Session,
yeah, but let me tell you something. I think that we should all go out a little bit, but I wouldn't say carefully. I would say, again, with purpose. I think I am a little bit against people having to go to work even if they are doing a nice job at home, because I think that some people really have to go out, and I think that people who don't have to go out can easily stay at home. I think it's better for them if they want to. They will feel safer, but they will feel safer and they will make others safer as well. But at the same time, and I can say this from my own experience, if we don't go out, as long as the time goes by, it will get worse. It doesn't get better. And I think that we all had that experience. We go out, and at some point, for instance, I went to Tecnico and it was really hot, and in the place where I work it was really hot, and you know, at some point I was really anxious to come back. I was not in any kind of danger, but I was not so much used to go out and to deal with the heat directly, and not to be in my own home in my comfort. So I think we should go out. I think we should go out and try to comply to the main rules. I think that we should not be perfectionistic regarding what we follow, but I think that we should check what the WHO organization says, World Health Organization, or in Portugal, the DGS, and try to follow what they say. And you can say, but nobody knows. Right, nobody knows. But I think that we have to follow some kind of rule and to make some boundaries. And I think that we should try to keep calm if we follow the rules. Use the mask, wash your hands, have alcohol with you, and at the same time, go out a little bit, maybe a little bit every day, in safe places, so that you so that your fear does not increase, paralyzing you.
Yeah. So we have here two other questions. I will try to put them together because they are a little bit the same topic. So it is regarding the work productivity when working at home. So Luigi is saying that some colleagues, professors are also coping in different ways and dealing with this time, with this COVID time
Right.
differently. So they are saying that we should make use of this time to work harder, for instance. So he's asking any suggestions on how to let them know that this doesn't work for everybody else. And Victoria is also saying that what if the level of demand is the same? So she acknowledges that the productivity is not the same, but what if the level of demand is the same? How will be evaluated if our results are not as expected?
Oh,
Yeah, a big question,
really,
very
yeah, it's a
interesting.
really tough question. I think, well, in general, and I was talking with João before and about something that I know that you know, and that is the FCT has decided to consider these 2 quarantine months as not counting for your PhD scholarships, which I find obvious. For those of you who keep busy and are productive, good, and I think you should be, because if you are not, you will be all the time thinking about what's happening, and there's not much use in that. At the same time, I think you should speak clearly with your supervisors and try to avoid one of 2 options that I find are not useful. One option is the teachers, the supervisors who will not meet with you regularly to check what is going on, and who don't even ask you, how are you feeling with all this crisis? I think that you should at the same time have more or less regular meetings so that you don't lose touch with reality, with the reality of your work again, because if you do, you know, when doing a PhD, if we lose momentum, it's very difficult to come back. So I think that going to a 0 productivity, which is different from making a holiday, to catch up some energy is a bit different. So I think that you are to avoid supervisors who do not connect with you during this time, but at the same time, I think you should try gently to explain, eventually by using examples like the FCT example, to explain that people do not live, and I said this in the beginning, people do not live this time at the same way, and productivity will affect some people more, the loss of productivity will affect some people more than others. And I know I've seen these, sorry João, I've seen this question that you also say, well, more women are here than men. Are women more alert towards taking care of mental health? And I would say yes and no. Women wanting to talk more about mental health doesn't necessarily mean that they are more efficacious dealing with their mental health. I think different people, and again, there are some differences in between men and women, different people again lead with this situation or deal with this situation in different ways, and I think we should accept that and respect that. On the other hand, I think that there's another side, important side of your question, and that is if men, or in fact anyone, are not taking care of their mental health, sometimes they will have very intense sadness, fear, and especially anger reactions. And I think that we should, as women, as people, give feedback on people around us if we feel that even if they are not taking care of their mental health, well, their mental health is taking care of their behaviors, and someone is going to be the victim of that. So I think that, I don't know if this is what you are aiming at, but I think that men and women, for instance, women usually do yoga and men do physical exercise. For me, everything is okay, as long as people use whatever works for them. And we can see if they are not using anything that works and give them feedback on that. If they are the friends, our couple, our family, or even our teachers and colleagues, I think this is not the time to make decisions, big decisions. I also think this is not a time to compete. So I think that we should try to stand our ground, not to stop working, because that's not good for your mental health, but not to let yourself be pushed into productivity, especially if that is damaging for your mental health. I don't know if I answered your question, but this is my thought on this.
Yes, thank you very much. So we don't have any more questions, but I have one. I would like to have your opinion on this because you work in Tecnico, well, for a long time now. I don't know how many years, but so you
Over
have
25.
Okay, so you may have more experience and information that you could let us know what your opinion on this. So about remote work and teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And you said before that now we are already having it, but it's like an emergency answer for this. So is this an answer to think about, to explore more and plan more, and continue having activities remotely? Is it a thing that is going to be present in our new normal in terms of teaching and in terms of working? What is your opinion on that?
I've got lots of opinions on that. But let me just tell you, well, maybe let's just start by the most polemic one. I think in what regards teaching and learning, I think there's a big, huge opportunity in what is happening at the moment. I think, in fact, maybe you are going to laugh at me, but I think, in fact, when we look at the time that we are living, 5 years from now, we will say, luckily for university, this happened. Because universities, I think, were becoming to feel lost in answering the characteristics of the actual students in the university. I think that students are very complex. They have lots of information. And my hope, but this is obviously my hope, is that we have maybe not so many people in classes, big classes, theoretical classes, and substitute that for very good communicators, maybe in platforms more interesting than Zoom, although Zoom is useful, but to give very inspiring talks. And I know that students, although we did not expect that, but students really like to be quiet, listening to a class and making questions on the chat, and to be able to watch the tape of the class later on. And I think that students are enjoying that a lot more than we expected them to. So first, I think that we will have to evolve towards a blended learning model where we have activities and we have more discussion, and maybe improve creativity and the critical thinking in students to solve problems, to think together and work as teams. And do a lot of this virtually, which will be very good, I think, to include people from several parts of the world and several universities without spending so much money on traveling. And you work on sustainability, not to have so many flights that are not very good for the environment. We all know that. So I think that other more well thought out and planned teaching and learning will be able to occur from a distance. And at the same time, I think that when I asked in my Facebook page what in the beginning or 2 weeks after the quarantine, what did they miss most? And all my friends and teachers from Tecnico and students would answer to hug someone, to be able to hug someone without worrying that he's going to be sick or I will be going to be sick. And I think that hopefully this will also give us the chance to really understand how important human contact is, and to maybe have smaller classes, smaller groups, working together as teams with a close connection to the teachers. And I think a mixture of these two things can actually save the university from sometimes boring teaching and learning experience. Okay. But this is maybe a bit, maybe many people won't agree with me, but I think something has got to change. And I think with time, we will understand that and do it properly, not just emergency-wise.
Yes, let's not say boring, but the need of more dynamic classes and teaching and learning about this. So will you say that this is like a test to a test time for universities to test new things and new answers, and also for students? This is actually a test for us as well. And Diogo has here a question about how do we cope with the eventuality of not doing well at certain classes and even failing them, in part because of not adapting well to the online class method. And how can we adapt better to a more online and at-home method of learning and studying, especially for someone who never studied at home and always at the university? What do you have to say?
Well, first, I don't think this is a test. I think this is just something that happened. And because it happened and it won't go back easily, we really have to cope with it. Because we are inventive and creative, I think that we will find creative ways to cope with the situations. Obviously, Diogo, sometimes it's really difficult. Sometimes we don't like to work at home. We prefer to work with our colleagues, not only in Zoom or Slack or whatever, but in fact, actually in person. And sometimes that is not possible. At the moment, it really is difficult. But I think that João was nice and was saying maybe not boring, but maybe not a lot dynamic. Yes, and in fact, I think that the pedagogical system in Tecnico in fact, was a little ahead in the wave of what happened, because we were changing, making big changes in the pedagogical model of Tecnico. They are going to be up in 2022, 21-22 academic year. So I think Tecnico was specially prepared to deal with the situation, but this is not a test. So this is something that we are adapting to. My hope is that we take the chance to understand what works, what doesn't work, and students and teachers have to do that, and to find ways to deal with the situations by using my preferred ways of dealing with the school. For instance, Diogo, maybe it's good that he's able to learn some tricks about comfortably working at home. Maybe it's useful to find some ways of having some discipline in doing that. Also, it will be a challenge to be able to work with other colleagues as teams, and to make it happen personally when possible, and when possible to have a better experience from actually working with people close. So I think it is not a test. I don't think we are there yet, but I think we can't go back now. And not being able to go back now, in some ways it's good, because it will have us all thinking about better solutions.
Okay.
All together.
Yes. So this time counts for our lives. So we must see it not as a test, but we need to cope with it the best we can, for sure. About this, Lucian is asking, how can if you have any tips on how to improve the network among colleagues and professors, because this is actually a present thing when we are physically in Tecnico or in a working place, but now we don't have this sense of community working together. So we have only Zoom, and we are actually alone at home, learning or teaching or even working. So if you have any tips to improve the network between colleagues, work colleagues.
Wow, that is a big, difficult question, in the sense that the problems that we had or students had before, obviously now are worse. If students did not have good ways to connect with each other, and I think that's something that needs improvement in Tecnico, if students do not connect with each other, not even in person, and a lot of that was happening, and people are left behind, and nobody pays attention if anyone is lost or doesn't know what to do. I think if now everybody is feeling that loneliness and even isolation and wants to fight that, good, good. And I think that it is really possible to deal with that. I'm going to give, who did the question? Diogo? No, doesn't matter. I'm going to give you my recipe on that. I have a team, and what we usually do is we do team meetings every 2 weeks on Zoom or Skype or whatever. We have a WhatsApp group, and we share some things on the WhatsApp group every day, except for weekends. And we always say good morning to each other when we are starting our work, and ask for how everybody is doing. And I know that my team will meet in Zoom or Skype meetings very often. And I try, not always succeed, but I try to call them on my phone and ask how they are doing, and if they are okay or not. And I think to be connected with people, I think it's still possible and we should do it. And in fact, I think that we can find out that some relationships will develop, will grow, will become better at this time, which maybe you think it's surprising. But I think if we put our effort into that and make it a priority, I think we can improve the relationships with some people that already were in our lives, and maybe we did not have the value they have for us. So let's not keep on doing that mistake, and let's stay close to the people we love. Let's hug them.
Thank you very much. So for our last question, Victoria is asking something about the present issue about going out of our quarantine. So next Monday, some kids return to kindergarten. Yes. Because kindergartens are going to be open again. How to deal with the anxiety that comes with it if they have to work and their children.
Their parents have to work.
So how the parents can deal with the anxiety of having his kid in kindergarten, and also because they have to work. I think that's the question.
Yeah. Again, I think we at some point, if I wouldn't say go back to normal, but we have to test. I think that's the word. I think we have to test what's going on for us, what's going on for our kids. I think that when kids, although again, we live in a world we can't control, and I think I am a mother, and mothers and fathers know that unfortunately we do not have much control of what's happening with our kids when they are not around, and even when they are close to us. At the same time, I think that kids have to have the opportunity to be with other kids, to learn the rules about coronavirus in an ambience that is with their own peers. I think that parents can do it slowly, gradually, if possible, to work maybe shorter hours, if possible, to go and pick them up a little bit earlier so that it is not a shock to them. But I think that we really have to do it slowly and we have to do it, I think, because it is something that we all have to learn to deal with it, and we don't learn to deal with it by staying at home all the time.
Yes.
Although we would eventually feel more comfortable, some of us, but I don't think it's possible.
Yes, we have to make efforts to come back to our new normal. And thank you very much for your presentation and your opinions and your availability for our questions. Isabel, it's a pleasure to have you here. And let's keep on work. Thank you very much. So I would like to thank you all.
Thank you very much for everybody.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much for your participation. And we will have another session next week. It will be in Portuguese. If you are interested, we will be posting the session on our social media, and maybe you will receive it on your emails as well. Thank you very much for your participation, and let's keep connected. Thank you very much.